Chapter 2556. Boss, why do you want us to think of these ideas? Zhang Ting still asked her own question. It was also everyone's question. Chun Zhao seemed to be very focused on this question. I have a friend who wants to make a movie with this theme. I want to see if you can think of a suitable idea. This answer was unreasonable, but at least Zhang Ting and the others could accept it. Anyway, compared to their boss's various ridiculous actions, this was reasonable enough. Boss, doesn't your friend have his own team? Don't worry about that. Just help me think. If you come up with something, I'll give you a bonus. You could do whatever you want in LA. Even if you want to be a star, I'll find them for you. How could this be so crude? Zhang Ting and the others weren't the only ones who thought this way. Chun Zhao thought the same too. He felt like a pimp. Boss, if it's just this, you don't have to drag us all here to boost America's GDP, right? This is serious, Chun Zhao said. It's more efficient to discuss it face to face. Boss, X's settings aren't perfect yet. Do you have a more detailed setting? What don't you know about X? X is an alien? Or superpower? Humans. I guess it's superpower, Chun Zhao said. How about resistance? It's about the same as attack. It can resist the power of a small nuclear explosion at close range. It can resist radiation too. Yes, Chun Zhao said. After all, Chun Zhao could directly endure all kinds of radiation in space. He hadn't tried the radiation damage of a nuclear explosion at close range, but it shouldn't be too far off. Then how does X recover his energy? I mean in battle. He has a rather complicated ability to recover energy. As I said before, X has a domain. He can recover by absorbing the energy in the domain, a fat man said. He can use his fist to compress the air at high speed, and then punch it forward to form a small area of high-pressure air. Wasn't this the shadow of a fist? Chun Zhao shook his head. I already have this move. Boss, have you been paying attention to technology recently? Zhang Ting asked. Technology? Does it have anything to do with what we're talking about? Do you know about gravitational waves? I've heard of this term, but I don't know the specifics. To put it simply, it's similar to water waves, but gravitational waves are spatial fluctuations. The collision and fusion of celestial bodies will produce gravitational waves. However, the denser the collision of celestial bodies, the stronger the gravitational waves. Currently, the gravitational waves that humans can detect are from neutron stars and black holes. As for the slightly weaker white dwarfs, they can only be detected at close range. I still don't understand what you were trying to say. X needs about 20 minutes to release neutron star. However, the density of white dwarfs is much lower than neutron stars, so X should be able to create 2 white dwarfs at the same time. Moreover, the efficiency should be much higher than releasing neutron stars. And then, release 2 white dwarfs at the same time and throw them out. Let them collide with each other in their flight paths. Through this collision, it can also create spatial ripples. That's a good idea. The 100,000 is yours, Chun Zhao said readily. It's a good start. Come, keep thinking. Although Zhang Ting said that the skill could be used, it still depended on the effect of actual practice. However, Chun Zhao felt that this skill had a good future. He might be able to use it in a real battle. Zhang Ting didn't know whether she should be happy or not. She'd been with Chun Zhao for 10 days. In the end, she'd gotten back all the money she'd invested in the studio. Boss, if X can compress a white dwarf with one hand, can I compress multiple white dwarfs in front of me without using my hands? This, Zhang Ting's words opened the door to a new world for Chun Zhao. Chun Zhao wasn't sure that he could do it. However, he could try, or rather, if he practiced, there seemed to be a high chance that he could do it. I'll give you another 100,000. The other employees in the studio all watched with bloodshot eyes. The second boss was a ruthless person, while the big boss was a werewolf. Boss, can I say something? Just then, the cleaning Andy spoke up. Yes, Andy. Boss, do you watch Naruto? Air. You watch. I watch. Boss, do you know about the truth-seeking jade? Well, there are quite a few people in Naruto who can use it, such as Naruto and that. Yeah, I know. Boss said that X can create white dwarfs. It's like a truth-seeking jade. Let X circle a few people around him. When he needs it, he can throw it out. When he doesn't need it, he can keep it by his side. Whoever comes over can use it. Let's see if he can't smash them to death. Any, that seems like copyright infringement, Zhang Ting said with a bitter smile. Not really. The copyright isn't a problem. I think it's possible. Chun Zhao rubbed his chin. It was difficult to control, but if he was familiar with it, it seemed to be able to effectively increase his combat power. This was the upgraded version of Zhang Ting's gravitational wave. Auntie, I'll give you 50,000. Keep up the good work. Boss is such a good person. The cleaning auntie was overjoyed. She just said a few words, and she'd actually made a lot of money. Auntie, you read comics too? My son does it. I read it when I'm free at work. Plus, our company does comics. I have to conform to our company's culture, right? Huh, makes sense. Chun Zhao glanced at the others. Look, even our cleaning Annie can help me solve my problems. You guys are professionals, after all. Then, Chun Zhao looked at the cleaning Annie. Annie, if you want to buy anything for your family, put on my tab. Everyone felt pressured. Chun Zhao's words were too direct. After tasting the sweetness, the cleaning Annie also wanted to help Chun Zhao solve his problems. The security guards' eyes were all red. They hated that they hadn't read comics before. Just then, a skinny, four-eyed guy couldn't sit still anymore. He stood up and said, Boss, does X want a way to become stronger? What do you think? Theoretically, since X can compress air in his domain, can X's domain keep evolving through this training? To put it simply, it's like having X's domain undergo weight training. Huh. Chun Zhao couldn't help but think. All this time, he'd only trained himself. He'd never thought about training his domain. However, the skinny guy's words did remind Chun Zhao. Chapter 25:57. Chun Zhao got what he wanted at the dinner. The skinny, four-eyed guy was a graduate who had just graduated from school. Moreover, he majored in fine arts. It wasn't easy to get a job. He had found a job like this. At the time, the skinny four-eyed guy only felt that this manga drawing job was at least compatible with his profession. When he entered the company, his colleagues told him about the boss' strange behavior. The next day, he was told that the company was going to travel abroad. He thought that it had nothing to do with him. In the end, he was dragged onto the plane too. At the time, he didn't think that the studio was rich. He just thought that the company was evil. But as soon as he arrived in Los Angeles, the boss gave him a down payment in a first-tier city before he even spent the money. He was just thinking about it and trying his luck. He didn't think that the boss would really give him a bonus. The others were startled by this. This guy can't be serious, right? Zhang Ting covered her head. She was calculating how much money Chun Zhao had spent on the studio recently. If converted to RMB, it would probably be 7 or 8 million. You guys continue to eat and drink to your heart's content. I want to accompany you guys. I don't want you guys to feel uncomfortable with me here. Zhang Ting, make a list of what they want to do tonight so that I can make arrangements. Got it, boss. After returning home, Chun Zhao and Fei Lai cuddled for an hour. When Fei Lai fell asleep, Chun Zhao sneaked into the river map. First was a white dwarf. Compared to a neutron star, creating a white dwarf wasn't a problem at all. Chun Zhao didn't even need a second to create a white dwarf. To put it simply, the higher the density, the more power he needed. For example, Chun Zhao only needed a second to create 1,000 times the density of air. But he needed 2 seconds to go from 1,000 to 1,500 times. So on and so forth. Time and power were the requirements of a linear ladder. According to the definition of astrophysics, a star with more than a ton per square centimeter could be called a white dwarf. A neutron star, on the other hand, had a density of more than 100 million tons per square centimeter. One could imagine how big the difference was. Of course, the white dwarfs that Chun Zhao could create in a short amount of time had a density that was much higher than the lower limit of a white dwarf, but also much lower than the density of a neutron star. In fact, even if Chun Zhao used all his strength, he wouldn't be able to create an object with a true neutron density. For example, Chun Zhao could create an air balloon with 1,000 times the density of a white dwarf in 1 second. To create a balloon with 2,000 times the density of a white dwarf, he would need several times the time and energy. To achieve 3,000 times the density, he would need several times the time and energy. To achieve 4,000 times the density, he would need even more time and energy. Chun Zhao's current limit should be around 6,000 times the density of a white dwarf, but he would need almost an hour. There was no battle that could make the enemy wait an hour for Chun Zhao to build up his power. Chun Zhao tried to create 2 white dwarfs with 1,000 times the density with both hands. It wasn't difficult either. It was no different from creating a single white dwarf. The power produced by the collision of 2 white dwarfs that were 1,000 times the size of a white dwarf was also considerable. It was already 1/3 of the power of a neutron star. He had to admit that Zhang Ting's brain was really useful. After all, he relied on his imagination for a living. This move, which she called gravitational wave, had indeed brought a huge breakthrough to Chun Zhao's actual combat. It even allowed Chun Zhao to go from close combat to true long-range combat. While retaining his close combat ability, he now had a long-range attack method. However, if he wanted to go one step further and create a few truth-seeking jades to float around him like the cleaner said, it would be very difficult. Without the control of his hands, he would have to compress them with the power of the pocket dimension and control the white dwarf to fly freely. He couldn't do it all. Chun Zhao fell into deep thought. It seemed that cultivating the pocket dimension was necessary. The skinny, four-eyed guy's training was very simple. He just had to carry weights. In fact, the method he provided was too simple and one-sided. Chun Zhao needed more training. Absolute control of the pocket dimension had to reach the same level as the physical body, or at least close to it. Although the pocket dimension was also an extension of the body, it was more like uncontrollable muscle tissue. It was like the extra fat on one's belly. One could control the rise and fall of one's belly, but one couldn't make it become like one's limbs. If Chun Zhao wanted to achieve the effect of his plan, he had to make the pocket dimension stronger. It was definitely impossible to move it as freely as one's limbs, but it wasn't completely impossible to get close to it. After all, Chun Zhao had a lot of time. The normal method of compressing large amounts of air in the pocket dimension to increase the density of the air in the pocket dimension would be the burden on Chun Zhao's body. How could he train the pocket dimension? He had no other choice but to use it. If he wanted to improve through battles, it was obviously the best choice. But how many battles could he fight against Chun Zhao? So, he might as well practice alone and use it again and again. Chun Zhao sat down and looked at the internal alchemy left by Old Turtle. Back then, Old Turtle had left because of his breakthrough. His internal alchemy had also turned into an internal alchemy condensed from immortal power. Therefore, it was much heavier than a sphere of the same volume. This was the difference in density. It was heavier than the densest substance in the world. Chun Zhao tried to lift the immortal power inner core. Of course, he didn't use his hands or any part of his body. He used the power of his realm. But this internal alchemy was too heavy. Think about it. A 10 by 10 by 10 cube of gold weighed 19,320 tons. The density of the internal alchemy was much higher than gold. The diameter of the sphere was almost 40 meters. This internal alchemy weighed 1,000,000 tons. Chun Zhao tried to slowly lift the internal alchemy. He could lift it, but it was far from being able to move it freely. It also couldn't be used as an attack in battle. As for condensing a small ball weighing tens of millions of tons with the help of the small world, Chun Zhao was far from being able to do so. It was impossible. Only now did Chun Zhao realize that he hadn't used and developed the pocket dimension enough. It could even be said that ever since Chun Zhao had comprehended the Shangqing realm, he hadn't actively developed or researched the pocket dimension, let alone trained it. The pocket dimension had expanded from its original diameter of 50 meters to 1,000 meters. But the actual increase was only in the range. It only increased his immortal power storage, recovery speed, and sensing range. His actual combat power didn't increase at all. What is it? Remember when you gave me a spell that could devour other people's domains? I remember. Why? Is there something wrong with the spell? No, I've made some changes recently. I wanted to take a look and see if there are any problems. The handsome young man received Chun Zhao's message. With just a glance, He had already understood the summary of the content. Tell me why you changed your magic. My goal was to strengthen and train my domain, but then I discovered a problem. I couldn't make any fundamental changes to my domain, so my training became meaningless. In fact, this principle was the same as the gym. If a person went to the gym, his original intention was to strengthen his body. But if his training in the gym only made him more familiar with the equipment, his body wouldn't change at all. His body did not change at all, so this training method was definitely wrong. What do you think of my changes? It's a big problem. A big problem? What's the problem? Think about it yourself. I'll only help you identify if there's a problem, the handsome young man said. Why? Tell me about it. You're not weak. In hell, you're a lord, so you should think about it yourself. It's good for you too. Sigh. I really don't like exchanging thoughts with masters like you. Every time I get to the point, I'll think about it myself. Chun Zhao sighed. You should learn to think. I can think, but it's not my strong suit. Then make it your strong suit. Okay, let's talk about something pleasant. Do you have anything pleasant to share with me? I killed a demon recently and stole a lot of gold from him. Oh, he also raised many unusual gods. Do you want some? I'll bring some for you next time I go to hell. Oh, unusual gods? In hell, only Beelzebub has a lot of them. Also, Samuel seems to have some too. Do you have a mother? Yes, the handsome young man said. If the mother gives birth to a special egg next time, pick the smallest 10 and give them to me. Why? Don't tell me you're too embarrassed to ask for the big ones. Anyway, the mother is good at giving birth. It doesn't matter if you have a few big ones. The handsome young man shook his head. When a mother breeds the special egg, it won't provide too much nutrients to the mother's egg, so the small eggs that are born are very likely to be the mother's egg. If you want to raise a new mother, you can only find it from the small eggs. By the way, the last time I went there, I saw a lot of eggs that haven't hatched yet. The mother probably just laid eggs. I'll get the people in charge of cloning and breeding to pick up those small eggs. I'll send them to you in a few days. Okay. Also, I bought a studio, so they helped me think of a few of my skills. Oh, that's a good idea. Why don't you think I'm being opportunistic when other people help me think? I ask you questions, but you want me to think for myself. That's what you want to say when you talk to me about the people you bought, right? What do you mean by bought? They're just working for me. Don't avoid the question. They're not in the same field as you. It's very common for you to broaden your horizons and gain enlightenment from people in other fields. They can't give you guidance, but more possibilities. As for me, if I were to tell you, I would only tell you one path, and you'd lose more possibilities. Chun Zhao sounded disdainful, but he remembered the handsome young man's words. But your studio also gave me an interesting enlightenment, the handsome young man said. Help me thank them. 9 Heavens Divine King. Zhang Ting stood on the balcony, enjoying the holiday breeze and the faint smell of the sea. Hotel suites rarely came with balconies. One had to admit that the location of this hotel was too good. It could watch the wind and the sea. In front was the sea, and behind was the downtown area. It could be quiet or moving. There was also a beach that belonged to the hotel, which directly increased the comfort of the hotel. Just then, Zhang Ting's phone rang. Zhang Ting, my yacht is already parked at the entrance of the hotel. You can come down when you're ready. Everyone is going out to play today. If you're ready, come to the pier in front of the hotel. Got it, boss. After hanging up, Zhang Ting said to her assistant, Go tell the others that the boss is waiting for us at the pier. Don't let him wait too long and leave a bad impression. Oh, got it. The assistant skipped out. The ratio of men to women in the studio was pretty balanced, but some of the girls in the studio were still in bed when they received the notice. This made them very smart. On one hand, they wanted to show off their beauty in front of the boss. On the other hand, time was too tight, so they didn't want to be late. Chun Zhao was dressed rather casually today. He was wearing colorful casual clothes and a sun hat. A few girls stared at Chun Zhao with shining eyes, as if they wanted to catch a rich husband. Boss, sorry for making you wait so long. It's fine, Chun Zhao said casually. We're all out to play. Don't do office stuff. Let's go on the yacht. Zhang Ting nodded. Her impression of Chun Zhao improved. She didn't really like Chun Zhao's nouveau riche style, but Chun Zhao's personality wasn't bad. However, Chun Zhao wasn't a bad person. He never put on airs in front of them. "Boss, where's the yacht you prepared?" "This one." Chun Zhao pointed behind him at the Hydra docked behind him. "This one?" Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. The yacht was too big. "Boss, it's too big. We don't even have 20 people. We don't need such a big yacht, right? It costs 2 to 300,000 a day to rent, right?" "No, it's mine," Chun Zhao said casually. "Let's go." Everyone had a new understanding of Chun Zhao's wealth. After boarding the ship, everyone was like Granny Lu entering the Grand View Garden. Even Zhang Ting, who was from an upper-class family, was shocked by how luxurious the yacht was. The yacht itself was full of technology. It also had all the functions. As long as they had all the resources, even celebrating the new year on the yacht would be exciting. Chun Zhao pulled over a folding chair and leaned against the swimming pool on the top floor. By then, the guys and girls in the studio had all changed. Some of the more conservative ones still wore traditional swimsuits. 3 girls were bolder and wore bikinis, which were very eye-catching. Zhang Ting also changed into a bikini, but her upper body was still covered with a large white shirt. Zhang Ting brought Chun Zhao a glass of wine. "Not bad. Did you make it?" "When I was studying in England, I worked part-time as a bartender." "What did you study when you were studying abroad?" "Astrophysics is looking at outer space with a telescope every day. This is way too different from the industry you're working in now, right? What I learned in the past was for my family. What I'm doing now is my own hobby." Zhang Ting said, "What about you?" "I studied medicine." "You quit medicine and went into business?" "No, I'm also a medical professor at UCLA. Chapter 2560. Zhang Ting was completely stunned. This man who looked like a nouveau riche was actually a university professor? Just then, 2 bold girls walked over. "Boss, come and play with us." With that, they pulled Chun Zhao. Chun Zhao pursed his lips. Why that sounds so awkward? However, the 2 girls weren't embarrassed because they said something wrong at all. They kept pushing Chun Zhao into the pool. Chun Zhao didn't want to spoil everyone's fun, so he cooperated. After half an hour, Chun Zhao said that he was tired again and wanted a rest. Zhang Ting sat cross-legged on the cushion. Seeing Chun Zhao walk over, she pinched her lower lip and whistled. "Your body is really good. I think you're really a good stock. You're rich, educated, and have such a great body. 80 points. Why only 80? Shouldn't it be 100 points? You're not handsome enough." Chun Zhao's mouth twitched. "You don't like being intimate with strangers, right?" Zhang Ting asked. Zhang Ting could tell that Chun Zhao was in agreement with her employees. "It's okay." Chun Zhao didn't admit it directly. "How about it? Think about the girls in our studio. They're all good. Their education, personality, and looks are all good. I'm married. I'm the father of 2 children." "Really? What a pity." Zhang Ting wasn't too surprised. In fact, she noticed that there were children's toys around Chun Zhao a few times during their video calls. She'd already guessed it. Now, it was just to confirm her guess. "Master, a call for you. Miss Alex is calling. Connect to my Bluetooth headset." Chun Zhao put on. "Alex, what's up?" "My team and the bank have already agreed," Alex said. "The bank will buy it at $32.75 per gram, which is 21% of the current market price. It's done so quickly." Chun Zhao was surprised. He'd thought that this negotiation would be a long battle. A month or 2 would be considered a short one. It wouldn't be surprising if it lasted half a year or even a year. The international gold price has been rising recently. If it doesn't fall, the longer it drags on, the higher the price they'll have to pay. Maybe it will fall tomorrow. About 5 days ago, a mudslide occurred in a Brazilian gold mine, causing hundreds of people to be buried. Now, the government has temporarily blocked the situation and is demanding $8 billion in compensation and fines from the mining company. That gold mine is currently ranked 4th in the world, and its annual production accounts for 9% of the world's total production. So before this matter is resolved, the price of gold will not fall. In other words, I got lucky, right? You could say that. Alex also laughed. Based on the 3% commission, this mission would bring her close to $300 million in income. This price is much higher than I thought. I thought it would be around 60% of the market price at most. It's very simple. I've also contacted other banks. This country doesn't have anything else, but there are plenty of banks. Moreover, it's not just the banks who can afford this batch of gold. There are also many rich people who can afford this batch of gold. 83% of the market price is already a huge profit for them. If it weren't for the fact that you don't have a clear proof of production, people would fight to buy it even if it's 105% of the market price. Alex didn't ask too much about the origin of the gold. Since Chen Zhao didn't tell her clearly, it was probably the kind of gold that came from illegal sources. However, she knew what her duty was. When we signed the contract, tomorrow morning, if possible. As long as it's morning? Of course. They really want to communicate with you, but I know you won't be interested. I'll leave this to you, Chen Zhao said. Then we'll talk tomorrow. After hanging up, Zhang Ting glanced at Chen Zhao. Boss, if you're busy, you can go back now. No, but I have a contract to sign tomorrow morning, so you guys can do whatever you want in the morning. I'll arrange other projects for you in the afternoon. Boss, we have our hands and feet. We don't need you to accompany us all the time. In my first month in LA, I encountered 2 shootings. One of them was when I was held hostage by the gunman, Chen Zhao said. Since I brought you guys out, I have to ensure your safety. Boss, you're so rich. I think we'll be in more danger if you stay with us. After all, if the kidnappers want to kidnap you, they might hurt us accidentally. That's why I need to find a few scapegoats, Chen Zhao said, smiling. Just then, a few guys ran over. Boss, I see that you have diving equipment. Can we go in? The water here is deep and you don't have a diving license, so you can't go in here. Also, without a professional coach, you can't go in alone. When the boat reaches the shallow water, I'll bring you in. Boss, do you have a diving license? I have an athlete diving license. When they reached the shallow water, Chen Zhao brought 4 guys and 1 girl into the water. In fact, this area was near Chen Zhao's moon coast. It was also Chen Zhao's private property. These otakus had never dived before. At first, they were very excited, but when they really went into the water, they were afraid and didn't dare to go in. Nevertheless, under Chen Zhao's guidance, they still went in. Zhang Ting had been worried that Chen Zhao didn't prepare well since he brought them overseas in such a hurry. Only now did she realize that her worries were unnecessary. From the moment they got off the plane, from the moment they got on the plane, they received the best trip. When they reached the shore, each of them held a giant clam of various sizes. This one's too small. Throw it back into the sea. Chen Zhao glanced at the giant clam in the skinny 4-eyed guy's hand. Such a small giant clam could only be considered a larva. They couldn't be eaten even if they were fished up. Chapter 2561. Boss, you're thinking too much. Even if you add 100,000 to their fitness cards, they won't enter the gym for a minute. Then build a fitness area in the studio. They have to work out for an hour every day. Boss, there's a park a few hundred meters downstairs. There's no need to build a fitness area. Who's going to supervise the park? Just build a fitness area. Whoever slacks off will get their bonus deducted. Zhang Ting didn't know if Chen Zhao was acting like a nouveau riche again, or if he was just having a bad taste. Boss, are you serious? Of course. Next time I'll take you to Africa. It'll be so boring if you lie down halfway. Zhang Ting decided to change the topic. If they continued, she was afraid that Chen Zhao would ask her subordinates to run a marathon before coming to work. Boss, how did you train your body? To be honest, Zhang Ting's first impression was that Chen Zhao was a nouveau riche. However, his well-toned muscles were definitely much prettier than the handsome men she'd seen on TV. Yes, in her eyes, he was beautiful. His body wasn't like those bodybuilders with explosive muscles. Using the current popular saying, it was wearing clothes to look skinny, taking off clothes to reveal flesh. Therefore, she really couldn't define Chen Zhao's temperament. Simply put, keeping your mouth shut and moving your legs is more effective than any diet pill. But you ate a lot for lunch too. Eat as much as you can, Chen Zhao said. For people like me who don't have excess fat, I get hungry more easily than fat people, so I need lots of nutrition. You'll get beaten up if you say that. Because everyone had gone to lie down, Chen Zhao had the boat dock. Going out to sea looked pretty classy. In fact, it was very tiring. Chen Zhao couldn't drag them up and make them jump around for a few more hours. However, as soon as they reached the shore, they seemed to recover. Boss, what's next? My original plan was to return in the evening. After dinner, you guys can go back to the hotel to rest. It's still early now. What do you want to do? I want to go to Beverly Hills. I want to go to Hollywood. I want to go to San Fernando Valley. All the male colleagues looked at this colleague. If you want to go to San Fernando Valley, go by yourself. I'm a big boss. It'll be embarrassing if I take you there, Chen Zhao said, annoyed. Who wants to go to Hollywood? I'll take you there. Actually, everyone was interested in Hollywood. In the end, everyone followed Chen Zhao to Hollywood. For the vast majority of young people in this world, Hollywood was the land of dreams. Even amateurs like them could not help but come to pay a visit. Don't think that pilgrimage is too much. Since the 1960s, Hollywood had been the benchmark and holy land of the film industry. After abandoning the European tradition and literature, and completely industrializing and commercializing movies, Hollywood also burst out with unprecedented charm and appeal. For example, those European directors were all denouncing Hollywood for ruining the art of film. In the end, when they received the invitations, all of them felt really good. It was an indisputable fact that no matter which country or region's film industry developed, they would have to crown themselves as a certain place's Hollywood to flaunt their standards. For example, domestic actors all risked their lives to come to Hollywood for gold plating. What was it for? When the domestic box office reached $70 billion a year, they were proud and felt that the film industry was close to Hollywood. However, they did not know that Hollywood's $12 billion a year was only in China. The worldwide box office was $100 billion. The box office could not fully reflect the power of Hollywood's film industry. The $400 billion weekly box office was the scariest. It was just like how Disney produced a fairy tale every year and kept reshooting it. What was it for? Most of the time, the box office suffered losses. Was Disney stupid? It was to boost the sales of their peripherals. A complete film industry chain was the foundation of Hollywood's power. Domestic movies were still in the early stages. The box office looked good, but there was no complete industry chain. It was just like the Japanese animation industry chain. When China could complete an industry chain, it would be truly powerful. The technology could be learned from others. The special effect companies in China were not bad. Many Hollywood special effects were outsourced to local special effects companies. However, the industry had to be built bit by bit. This was a vicious cycle. Because the industry chain was not complete, it was too risky to just rely on the box office to recover the cost. Because of the high risk, the investors did not dare to invest too much money. Without enough money, the special effects were not good enough. The huge box office earnings of domestically produced movies every year were actually supported by few movies with a conscience. Without these movies, the annual box office would be halved. However, a country's film industry could not only be supported by a few movies with conscience. There were many places in Hollywood that paid to visit. This was actually one of Hollywood's industries. The income was not high. In fact, tens of millions of tourists visited Hollywood every year. How could he say that he had been to Los Angeles if he had never been to Hollywood? Boss, do you have connections in Hollywood? Zhang Ting asked. What? Are you planning to enter Hollywood? Chen Zhao teased. If Xiao Qi and the others want to have fun, they could be extras too. They can brag that they filmed Hollywood blockbusters when they come back. Chen Zhao couldn't help but laugh. I'll ask if my friend needs an extra. Boss, you really have connections? I know 2 or 3 people. Chen Zhao said casually. Steven, what are you doing now? Fuck, you Astra Shoal. How long have you been missing? I went to your house last week, but you weren't home. I was chased out of Mirror Lake by Princess. If you didn't want the wine in my cellar, would you have been chased by Princess? Chen Zhao knew Steven too well. He had only been chased by Princess when Fei Lai was not home. There was only Portia and the kids at home. Then, he would steal the wine from the cellar. That was why he was chased by Princess. Humph, I hate you now. If you don't give me a box of wine, we're done. Are you on set now? Yes. Why? I have a few friends who want to have fun. Do you have any extras? 1 or 2 scenes. Chapter 2562. Okay, come with me. Boss, you really have a way. Yeah, didn't I tell you last time that X's settings and skills were all for a friend of mine? Okay, Zhang Ting still didn't believe Chun Zhao. If it was a proper film company, how could they not have their own creative team? Was Chun Zhao's friend the type from Sanctuary Film Company? The more Zhang Ting thought about it, the more likely it seemed. Sanctuary Film Company was probably unfamiliar to most people, but most people had been harmed by the company. Sanctuary Film Company was the most famous copycat film company in the world. They would copy whatever other people filmed. And the most amazing thing was that they still maintained a very special record. That was, none of the movies they had shot had any losses. Chun Zhao brought them to a film set. Chun Zhao saw someone familiar outside. Famtis. Hi, Chun. Famtis glanced at the people behind Chun Zhao. Who are they? My friends. I brought them here to ask your boss for a few extra rolls. Okay. Famtis waved at the two security guards in the distance. Chun Zhao and the others successfully entered the set. Before he entered the interior, he could already hear the roar. Zhang Ting and the people behind her couldn't help but shiver. She didn't hear it too clearly just now, but she heard at least 3 Fs in that sentence. Chun Zhao chuckled and walked into the interior. He saw Steven spitting saliva at an actress. The actress was trembling and didn't dare to say anything. She looked like she was about to cry from Steven's spitting. When Zhang Ting and the others followed Chun Zhao in, they realized that this wasn't a normal crew. After all, the one who was scolding him was none other than Steven. Chun Zhao walked to the camera and greeted the assistant director. Then he pulled Steven's chair over and sat down. He crossed his legs and watched Steven spitting. Chun Zhao knew more than half of the people in Steven's crew. To Chun Zhao, this was no different from going home. Wei walked over with a cup of coffee. Thank you. Chun Zhao took the coffee. That's my coffee. Why did you get to this asterisk shoal? Steven yelled when he realized that his coffee was in Chun Zhao's hand. Wei had long been used to her boss. She just shrugged lightly. Boss, you should find the culprit who took your coffee instead of getting angry at a weak assistant like me. Who? Chun Zhao blew at the coffee in his hand. It's already afternoon, and you still want to drink coffee to refresh yourself. Steven, are you tired? Do you want me to prescribe some medicine for you? Fuck off, get out of my way. This is my place. Zhang Ting was surprised to see the interaction between Chun Zhao and Steven. Looking at how familiar they were with each other, it didn't seem as simple as just knowing each other. These are your friends? Yes, I'll be out in the country for a week. Do you need any extras? If not, I'll ask James. James's new film has been shot for a long time. It's now in post-production, so he won't have any chance to act as an extra in a short time. Fine. How many extras do you need? Chun Zhao asked. Doesn't matter. It's just changing the original group members. Steven didn't have any psychological counseling when it came to this. Chun Zhao pouted. I feel like I'm a bad guy. Wait for a while. I still have a few scenes that require an extra. Just find a place to sit, Chun Zhao said to Zhang Ting. Zhang Ting sat beside Chun Zhao and glanced at Steven in front of her. Steven was directing at the moment and didn't have time to care. Boss, are you close to director Steven? Not really. Wasn't he lying through his teeth? If this was not close, then there really wasn't anyone close. Boss, the X setting you mentioned is for director Steven? No. All the employees in the studio were very excited. After all, it was the great director Steven. If there was a big boss in the film industry, it would definitely be Steven. Although Chun Zhao was here, when Steven was immersed in filming, he displayed absolute professionalism. He didn't have any distractions. Every scene had to be perfect. The actress who was almost scolded to tears by Steven finally gave a satisfactory performance after he threatened to replace her. The actress who was almost scolded to tears by Steven finally gave a satisfactory performance after Steven threatened to replace her. There were only 4 short scenes, but Chun Zhao still waited for an hour and a half. They even received some simple makeup from the production team's makeup artist. Then Steven came over to talk to them about the scene. Usually, Steven wouldn't talk to a group. It was only because they were Chun Zhao's friends. So he still showed enough friendliness. But Steven didn't know that when they came in, his image had already been completely destroyed by his vulgarities. Their scene was very simple. The supporting actress entered the restaurant and fought with the main character. Zhang Ting's group would play the restaurant's customers. They were the ones who were affected. It would have been fine if there were only one or two Asian faces, but they were all Asian, so Stephen had no choice but to change the script slightly. But this was only a small matter. He just had to change the scene to a Chinese restaurant on Chinatown. Zhang Ting filmed 2 scenes. She was the owner of the restaurant, so she had one more scene and a few more scenes than the others. Everyone was still in a state of excitement when they finished filming. Even Zhang Ting, who was usually calm and collected, could not hide her excitement. How was it? Did you enjoy it? Yes. Zhang Ting gradually calmed down, but she was still amazed by Chun Zhao's power. This wasn't something a nouveau riche could do. After bidding farewell to Stephen, Chun Zhao left with his group. Actually, this opportunity wouldn't bring any change to their lives. At most, it was just something they could brag about in the future. Boss, you're serious about making Chinese comics, right? What do you mean serious? Have I ever not been serious before? Chun Zhao felt a little guilty when Zhang Ting asked this, because his original intention wasn't to make Chinese comics. At the moment, Chun Zhao was also reflecting. Well, had he exposed his impure intentions? No matter how he thought about it, he couldn't think of anything wrong. Boss, if you want to make Chinese comics, you can't spend money like this. You have to invest it into the promotion and production of your works. I'm spending a lot of money, Chun Zhao said, embarrassed. Why are you suddenly so serious? Let's change the topic. Chapter 2563. You should know what it means. Zhang Ting glanced at Chun Zhao. Don't make your employees your enemies. Chun Zhao nodded. Looking at Zhang Ting, Chun Zhao sighed. I think you're more suitable to be a life coach. When Chun Zhao returned home, he passed by a construction site. It was Mountain Town, near the center. It was about 1,000 square meters. Chun Zhao stopped because he saw Clive's car. When he entered, he saw Clive talking to the person in charge of the site with a construction cap. Hi, Clive. Mr. Chun, how come you're here? Is this the new location for your kindergarten? Yes. I should have sent you a message already. Didn't you see it? I wasn't here before, so I probably didn't receive the message. Chun Zhao looked around. Is it going well? Nothing bad, Clive said. It'll be officially completed by the beginning of February. The new students can start school in the middle of February. Okay, Clive said. Since it's for kids, we have to pay attention to the construction quality. We can't have any problems here. America was a country full of tolerance and protection for underage children. Anything that involved underage children would become a big problem. Plus, Chun Zhao's own child was going to school. Of course, he had to make everything perfect. Clive nodded. Then Chun Zhao said, Tell me if you don't have enough money. Got it. Chun Zhao didn't stay long and left in a hurry. When he returned home, he realized that there was a little girl. Darling, how come there's a little angel here? Chun Zhao asked Fei Lai. That the classmate Enrich brought back. She's staying here tonight. Did you tell her parents? Chun Zhao asked. Here, if you bring a girl home without the other party's guardian's knowledge, you'll be in trouble. Even if they had good intentions, they could still be accused of abducting a minor. I talked to her mother, Fei Lai said. She agreed. The girl played with Enrich and a few other children. They seemed to be very close. However, she was only 6 or 7, so she was still a bit scared when she saw Chun Zhao. The boys were soaking in the water with little Jerlin. Speaking of little Jerlin's swimming talent, no one could compare to her. Even Kilo, who was the oldest among the boys, could not outrun Jerlin if he did not use his magic. Little Jerlin was not even a year and a half old, and she was no bigger than a child her age. But she swam very fast in the water. Jerlin seemed to have a natural affinity for water. Most adults might not even be able to swim faster than little Jerlin. This was Chun Zhao's most enjoyable moment. Just then, 2 brownish-yellow figures pounced on Chun Zhao. Simba and Nana were no longer the little ones they used to be. They had grown quite a bit and were probably about the size of 2 half-grown little yellow dogs. Briar and Bramble hugged Chun Zhao's legs. They had grown quite a bit too, but compared to their mother, they were still tiny. Briar and Bramble also wanted to climb onto him, but they couldn't. In fact, they are very good at climbing trees. In the whole family, they were the most capable. It was just that he could go up, but not down. He climbed to the top of the tree several times but did not dare to come down. Chun Zhao had to go up and catch them. At night, Chun Zhao entered the river map again. Chun Zhao kept the handsome boy's words in mind. Chun Zhao looked at the spell the handsome boy had given him and then compared it with what he had modified. But after a while, another thought popped into his head. Was everything he was doing just to change things? Chun Zhao could vaguely feel that something was about to catch that point, but it was hard to find and grasp. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days. Chun Zhao still did not make any progress. Chun Zhao's brain was a bit slow. He had never sat on the ground for so long. It was not just to change, but to become more perfect. Chun Zhao suddenly thought of a question. What was the future of the small world? To make the small world bigger? Vaster? Was this the future of the small world? If it was just to expand the small world, then all this would be meaningless. Take Bifla, for example. As a powerhouse who had just entered the Shangqing realm, he was many times weaker than his own little world. But was there a difference between the two? Chun Zhao sat there for another month. Chun Zhao kept thinking along this train of thought. The idea in his head became clearer and clearer. Chun Zhao looked at the cultivation method he'd modified. Chun Zhao finally understood what the handsome boy meant. But now he also felt the difference. With just one glance, the handsome young man knew what his problem was. But Chun Zhao actually used more than a month to think it through. Chun Zhao started to modify the cultivation method according to his own train of thought. Chun Zhao was not sure if his train of thought was correct, but he felt that he had found the direction. Old Zhang, how about coming to Los Angeles? What? Communication. Communication? I might have found a path, but I need more communication. Okay, I'll come. After hanging up, Chun Zhao called Bifla. Bifla. Then it was Blood Mary 23. Blood Mary, Bifla, and 23rd Blood Mary also agreed to come to Los Angeles. On the other hand, Chun Zhao had spent 2 nights in the river map. He had spent a few months there. There was no progress at all in his original cultivation plan. All his energy was spent on establishing theories. Since it was still early, Chun Zhao ran to the sky to cultivate his yin-yang inner elixir. He didn't return to the manor until 5 in the morning. The lesser demons were already busy at this time. After 8 in the morning, the family woke up one by one. Portia arrived at breakfast time. Then, those who should go to work went to school. Chun Zhao told Portia to stay at home. He had to sign a contract. When Chun Zhao arrived at the signing site, Alex brought him in. The signing site wasn't a public place. Yamala was there too. She was the bank's representative. After a simple greeting, they started signing the contract. Of course, they only started after the lawyers of both sides reviewed the contract. Both sides had large and professional lawyers. Even though they had agreed beforehand, they still had to examine the contract word by word on the spot. Finally, a lawyer would explain every clause of the contract to Chun Zhao. Chapter 2564. The signing process went smoothly. No one asked Chun Zhao about the origin of the gold. Both parties seemed to have silently acknowledged the origin of the gold. Chun, let's go sit in the next room, Immerse said. Chun Zhao nodded and went to the next room with Amira. Congratulations, you've earned a lot of money again. Amira, I'm selling a loss. Amira didn't retort. Indeed, the bank she represented didn't lose money this time. But Chun Zhao's profit was real. Moreover, the gold that Chun Zhao had sold probably wasn't bought with his own money. Chun, do you have any more gold? No. I sold all 300 tons to your bank. I don't have any more. Really? Amira stared at Chun Zhao. I still have some scattered gold, but it's definitely not enough to satisfy your appetite, Chun Zhao said calmly. He'd already sold 300 tons. Chun Zhao wouldn't admit that he still had more. The bank's purchase price was higher than Aqualati Gisli's. In reality, the two transactions were completely different. The bank called a mortgage loan. It could only do this once. Chun Zhao's sale to Aqualati Gisli was the real deal. As long as Chun Zhao still had stock, he could sell it to anyone. Of course, it was for long-term economic benefits. Chun Zhao couldn't sell so much in a short time, even if he had a good relationship with Amira. Fine. Amira didn't continue on this topic. Actually, she was also testing him. She couldn't be sure if Chun Zhao still had gold. But even if Chun Zhao had gold, at this time, temporarily stopping trading and keeping the gold in hand was also the wisest choice. When the amount of gold reached a certain level, it wouldn't just be gold anymore. At that time, gold could be used as a bomb to shake the market. Amira wasn't asking as a representative of the bank. Instead, she was asking as a representative of her family. Financial giants like her and her family all knew the importance of gold. So, she and her family wanted to buy some gold to keep as a trump card. It wasn't that there wasn't gold on the market, but it was basically scattered gold. There were also a few people who had large amounts of gold. But if Chun Zhao wanted to buy gold from them, therefore what was needed was not 83% of the market price. Basically, the other party would ask for 105% of the market price, or even 110% or 120%. Therefore, there weren't many people like Chun Zhao who had gold at a low price anymore. No, he was the only one. Chun, if there's gold next time, can you inform me first? I was the first to inform you. You could have purchased it in your own name. Amelia smiled bitterly. Her initial thoughts were simple. She couldn't possibly give him such a high price. Therefore, Chun Zhao would definitely choose to sell it to the bank, not to her. Moreover, neither she nor her family could afford $10 billion to buy so much gold. Her family couldn't afford such a huge amount of gold. She didn't think that Chun Zhao would split 300 tons of gold. If he sold 300 tons of gold to the bank, or split it into 2 or 3 portions, the value would be different. Anyway, my family wants to buy a batch of gold. How much can you eat? He asked. Chun Zhao asked. Less than 100 tons. Amelia glanced at Chun Zhao. You really have it? I don't have 100 tons, but I can take out a few dozen, Chun Zhao said. I want all of it, according to the price you agreed with the bank. Sure. Chun Zhao didn't want to go through the trouble of negotiating again. When will you deliver it? In a few days, Chun Zhao said. I'm busy now. Okay, let me know when you're free. I need to raise money too. Not everyone could have a terrifying cash flow like Chun Zhao. Even Amelia and her family's assets were more than 10 times that of Chun Zhao's. But the cash they could actually take out was probably less than 1/10 of Chun Zhao's. Then I'll have someone send the gold to your house first. When you've collected the cash, transfer it to me. Aren't you afraid that my family will betray you? I'm not a good person, Chun Zhao said calmly. I'm not restricted from attacking normal people, Chun Zhao said calmly. If you harm my interests, I'll destroy you physically. Amelia's expression froze. She'd only been joking. Now, she suddenly felt that her joke wasn't that funny. I'm a bit busy these days. Just let me know when you're transferring the money. After discussing with Amelia, Chun Zhao left the office. Andrews had been waiting for Chun Zhao outside. Mr. Chun, the bank's money has been transferred to your account. Yeah, same rules as before. Don't give me those high-risk investments. You can do the rest. Got it, Mr. Chun. Andrews suppressed the excitement in his heart. With more than $10 billion in his hands, he felt like he could call the wind and summon the rain. If a rich person had $1 million and invested it on Wall Street, he might lose everything. If the rich person invested $100 million on Wall Street, there was a high chance that he wouldn't lose anything. But if it was $10 billion, he could be the banker himself. Investing money into high-risk projects? Which project could take in more than $10 billion in cash? If he could be the banker, he obviously wouldn't be the banker. Chun Zhao trusted Andrews quite a bit. At least, he was very obedient. Oh, Andrews, help me select some aircraft manufacturers. I want to buy a few planes. Okay, Mr. Chun. Andrews nodded. Mr. Chun, what type of plane do you prefer? I plan to buy 2 planes, Chun Zhao said. One would be best if it's a large one and a small one. Mr. Chun, Gulfstream would be the best for a small private plane, Andrews said. Andrews said, as for large aircraft, there are many competitive companies. Airbus and Boeing are the leaders in large passenger aircraft. Sure, organize the information and give it to me. Chun Zhao walked a few steps and stopped. I have a few friends who came from China. They want to go hunting in the forest. Mr. Chun, is tomorrow okay? Okay, tomorrow. Chun Zhao nodded. Then, Chun Zhao went to the hotel. Boss, are you done? Zhang Ting was a bit surprised to see Chun Zhao so early. When Chun Zhao called yesterday, Zhang Ting was beside him. She heard Chen Zhao say that he had something to do with the contract this morning. She thought that Chen Zhao wouldn't even have a day. I'll just sign it. It won't take long. Chen Zhao shrugged. I'll take you to Beverly Hills in the afternoon. Zhang Ting's eyes brightened. Beverly Hills was a top shopping mecca. She also heard that there was a high chance of meeting Hollywood stars there. 9 Heaven's Divine King. Chapter 2565. Beverly Hills had the title of the most luxurious residential area in the world. There were countless mansions here. During the economic crisis, property prices all over the world plummeted. Only Beverly Hills property prices were still rising steadily and slowly. Of course, Beverly Hills didn't just have mansions. Wilshire Avenue was the most famous commercial street in Beverly Hills. There were many commercial buildings and countless top department stores here. Close to 200 specialty stores were located in the center of the commercial street. For example, Roeder Avenue was also a gathering place for all kinds of top luxury and trendy brands. Each store was dazzling and uniquely designed. It could even be said that the owners of these stores were at least multimillionaires. Chen Zhao had once wanted to buy a few stores as investments. However, even if the stores along the street were for sale, they were all much higher than the actual price. A small store with an area of only about 20 square meters would cost $20 to $30 million. There was also the farmers market, which was known as the gathering place for gourmet food. It gathered the most famous food in the world and was also a favorite place for tourists. In addition, Hollywood stars and celebrities liked to open shops here, and they were successful in every endeavor. There were also many attractions here, many of which had been filmed in movies. One afternoon wasn't even enough to walk around. However, for Zhang Ting and the others, it was a crazy journey. Chen Zhao had seen this expression on Portia's face before. It was the kind of crazy expression that would appear on people's faces when they saw famous brands and luxury goods. These girls had completely lost their minds and were buying luxury goods that were far higher than their income. It was just like when Portia was in Shinjuku, Tokyo. It seemed like all the women in the world were the same. They walked in and out of every luxury and brand store tirelessly. As for the men who didn't want to shop, Chen Zhao arranged for them to sit in a restaurant. Gee, are you sure you want to buy these shoes? Zhang Ting also lost her composure, but she was still shocked when she saw the price tag on the shoes. $13,500. That was in US dollars. But I really like them. She was conflicted. Buy them if you like them, Chen Zhao said casually. Treat it as a gift. Boss, that's not appropriate. There's nothing inappropriate about it. You guys can also choose something within $20,000. Treat it as a gift. The girls all screamed in excitement. They wanted to pounce on Chen Zhao and give him a few bites. When Chen Zhao paid, Zhang Ting didn't even dare to look at the long bill. Since we're out to play, let's enjoy ourselves. There's no need to dampen everyone's spirits. Boss, it's not easy for you to earn money. Your behavior is simply, you want to say that I'm a nouveau riche again. No, it's a prodigal son. Prodigal sounds better than nouveau riche. Boss, all right, that's enough. You guys answered my questions before and helped my friend solve a lot of problems, so he asked me to thank you properly. I won't spend any effort on it. Rewarding you with money is the only way I can think of. Zhang Ting was speechless. She felt that Chen Zhao was just making up excuses. Chen Zhao dared to pay, and so did the girls. By the time they finished strolling around Roeder Street, everyone was carrying big and small bags. Let me take it back to the hotel, Chen Zhao said. It's not convenient to carry it like this. Zhang Ting patted her head. Boss, that's enough for today, right? She was really afraid that these little girls would go crazy and cause her to lose all her fortune. The cheap ones cost $200 or $300, and the expensive ones were endless. All right, let's go find the guys first. They'll probably have their butts rotten from sitting in the restaurant for the whole afternoon. In the next few days, Zhang Ting watched Chen Zhao spend money like water. It was difficult to visit all of Los Angeles in a few days, but if they had money, they could really enjoy most things. Basically, Chen Zhao could satisfy whatever they wanted to see or play. For example, concert tickets or boxing tickets. Chen Zhao settled them with a phone call. On the 7th day, the studio was finally going back. Everyone was enjoying themselves so much that they forgot to go home. Chen Zhao sent them to the airport. I've already checked your things, Chen Zhao said. Be careful on the way. Work hard this year, and I'll arrange for you to go abroad again at the end of the year. Everyone looked at Chen Zhao expectantly. Boss, can we choose our own place? Yes. Chen Zhao nodded. If you can do something that satisfies me, even if you choose the moon, I'll send you there. Then Chen Zhao looked at Zhang Ting. Zhang Ting, expand the studio and hire more people. Don't you want to animate your work? What kind of animation can you make with just a few people? Are you going to outsource to other companies? Zhang Ting was speechless. That was her original plan. Outsource to other companies. She could already guess what Chen Zhao was going to say next. How much does it cost to set up an animation department? Boss, it's a lot of money. The animation department will either train new people or poach old people. Also, some equipment. How much? Boss, it's not a matter of money. Even if we set up an animation department, we'll be incurring losses for the next few years. Who knows when we'll recover our costs? You should know the situation in the domestic market. There's a market, but we need to develop it. It's not a big deal to lose tens of millions a year, as long as you can find me more people with brains. Chen Zhao's real goal was to find more people. If he had similar problems in the future, they could help him plan. Boss, if you really want to make money, other industries are more profitable than Chinese comics. Don't think that Chinese comics are rising just because Nez's box office hit. Look at how many Chinese comics died in the past. Okay, I understand what you're trying to say, Chen Zhao said calmly. I've never thought about making money from Chinese comics. I just want to do something for them. Even he felt a little guilty when he said this. His goal had never been so noble. Just tell me a number. How much do I need to invest in the early stage, and how much do I need to invest every year in the future? 200 million in the early stage. In the future? I'm not sure. Okay, find a professional manager first. Since we're going to set up an animation department, it can't just be a studio. We have to set up an animation company. 9 Heavens Divine King. Chapter 2566. Chen Zhao could get Zhang Ting to start a studio. A studio didn't need much management. Everyone could just focus on cleaning. However, it was different for a company. Boss, can I find someone I know? Zhang Ting asked. Sure, but I'll send someone to the finance department myself, Chen Zhao said. It wasn't a matter of trust. Any company had to be supervised. Without supervision, unspeakable things would grow. It was unavoidable. Just then, a group of people walked out of the airport. A group of bodyguards in black surrounded a man from Central Asia. Chen Zhao. It was Bifla. How did you know my flight would arrive at this time? I don't know, Chen Zhao said casually. I'm here to send my friends off. Boss, you have guests. We'll go into the departure lounge first. Okay, I won't send you guys in. Director Zhang, that Central Asian guy looks very powerful. He has 20 bodyguards alone. Of course, Zhang Ting whispered. He's the richest man in Central Asia, gunned by Bifla. Our big boss knows someone like that? I thought he was just a nouveau riche. What are you thinking? Our boss is smarter than anyone. Do you really think he's a nouveau riche? Smarter? Really? I just think he's dumb. He's a university professor. His knowledge can only be higher than yours. Zhang Ting rolled her eyes at her assistant, Xiao Qi. You think he's dumb because he doesn't want to argue with you. Zhang Ting didn't know what business Chen Zhao did. But after interacting with Chen Zhao for a few days, Chen Zhao often didn't hide his calls from her. Once, she heard Chen Zhao say that he would chase them out of the California market and inform all the supermarkets. If anyone put their products on the shelves, he would cut off their supply. Zhang Ting knew that Chen Zhao's business was definitely not small. No ordinary manufacturer would dare to run out of stock in a supermarket. Because supermarkets were the upstream of manufacturers, they were usually in a strong position. Many times, if a manufacturer offended a supermarket, then it wouldn't be the manufacturer cutting off their supply. Instead, the supermarket wouldn't even give them a chance to put their products on the shelves. This was because almost every product had products of the same type and quality. Supermarkets didn't care if they had one more or one less product. Yet, Chen Zhao could say something like that with such confidence. In that case, Chen Zhao's products definitely had a strong consumer base, and even knew a big shot like Gun by Bifla. Looking at their interaction, it was not something an ordinary business partner could compare to. Without a certain background, people might not even bother with you. If Chun Zhao wasn't married, he would already have a child. Zhang Ting couldn't help but say that Chun Zhao was tempted. Although she came from a good family background, she couldn't compare to Chun Zhao in terms of family background. In the past few days, Chun Zhao had probably spent more than what she had worked hard for in the past few years. There was also the wealth that Chun Zhao had displayed in the past few days. That super cruise ship was estimated to cost more than 100 million US dollars. Also, he came to the hotel in a different car every day. Just the Porsche 918 alone had already gathered 4 colors. Chun Zhao, you said you found a way to break through? It's hard to say. I just found some ancient books and studied them. Combined with my own situation, I came up with a solution. Chun Zhao didn't hide it. He directly took out the content of his modified cultivation method. Bifla took it. It was arranged with the cultivation method of the small world, Chun Zhao's experience and thoughts, as well as the research process. Bifla read carefully. His expression changed. He couldn't tell if it was good or bad. How is it? I can't tell. I've never heard of a small world having a cultivation method. Then wait. Old Zhang and Blood Mary should be here today or tomorrow, Chun Zhao said. Bifla nodded. The 3 of them had talked on the phone before. The 3 placed great importance on this meeting. After all, in the current world, the 4 of them were already at the peak of humanity. No one could give them guidance. They had to figure out themselves. If the 4 of them were still hiding things, in the end, none of them would be able to break through. If one of them could break through, the others would all die in the future. The person who broke through would also protect their heritage for the sake of their past relationship. This was based on their current status and future considerations. Thus, no one would hide things on their path of advancement. They couldn't hide things. Bifla had come publicly this time. Zhang Tianyi and 23rd Blood Mary were both very low-key. They didn't let anyone know that they'd come to Los Angeles. The 3 leaders were all here. Chun Zhao came to their gathering. Without wasting any time, he went straight to the topic. Look at this first. Chun Zhao took out the cultivation method of the small world. This, 23rd Blood Mary glanced at it and then shook her head. I don't understand. Zhang Tianyi took it and studied it carefully for a long time. Then he looked up and asked, this is used to cultivate the small world, right? Chun Zhao nodded. 23rd Blood Mary's expression changed. In the past, she'd always been under Zhang Tianyi's name. She'd been a bit unwilling at first. But now, she had to admit that Zhang Tianyi's title of #1 in the supernatural world wasn't just for show. The symbol of Shangqing is the small world. So, I'm thinking if the small world is the key to breaking through. Why do you think so? I don't think so. In the beginning, my goal was to cultivate the strength of my pocket world. However, after searching for half a day, I discovered that there was no cultivation technique for cultivating the strength of my pocket world. Instead, I found relevant information in an ancient book. Can I see that ancient book? Zhang Tianyi asked. Chun Zhao shook his head. No. Zhang Tianyi nodded. He didn't ask why. Since Chun Zhao had gathered them, he definitely wouldn't hide it for no reason. Since he hadn't taken it out, he must have his own reasons. Bifla and 23rd Blood Mary also understood. This cultivation method of the pocket world was obtained after I modified it from that ancient book. Apart from sharing and exchanging information, I also hope that you can help me perfect this cultivation method of the pocket world. Chun Zhao paused. Now, if you don't understand anything about this method, you can ask. I'll try to answer you. Chapter 2567. Chun Zhao. Is it necessary to use Nirvana's flame to refine it? No, but Bifla and I both know Nirvana's fire, Chun Zhao said. But I'm not sure if other types of flames will work. When I was writing this, I tried using my Nirvana's fire. It works. It's also the only fire elemental spell I know. Nirvana's fire? Bifla taught it to you? Not really. We studied it together, Bifla said coolly. I only learned it before Chun Zhao and gave him some pointers, Bifla said indifferently. I also cultivate a fire elemental spell. I don't know if it works, Chun Zhao said. Zhang Tianyi said, if it's not possible, I guess I'll have to use your Nirvana's flame cultivation method. I know hellfire, but I don't know if it works, 23rd Blood Mary said. I don't think you have to use fire, Biflis said. Biflis said, fire is used because it is the fastest way to achieve the effect of change. However, if there are other powers and attributes, it is not impossible to achieve the effect of change. Zhang Tianyi thought for a moment and nodded. I can't be sure yet. After all, there's too little data. But if other elements work too, we just need to make some changes here. In terms of theory, the other three were all above Chen Zhao. The four discussed for a long time. None of them had any intention of stopping. If this segment were to be replaced with the Venerable Spirit Temple's Qi-devouring technique of Mount Longhu's Celestial Master Sect, it might have an extraordinary effect, Zhang Tianyi said. The spiritual temple he was talking about was the highest cultivation method of Dragon Tiger Mountain's spiritual temple. It could only be cultivated by people in the Shangqing state. Since ancient times, the number of people who were qualified to cultivate this technique were few and far between. 23rd Blood Mary frowned. She looked at Zhang Tianyi. Old Zhang, are you sure you want to take out the spiritual temple? I'm not taking it out. I'm just taking a part of the technique. I'll also modify it. If Chen Zhao's technique succeeds, we'll all benefit greatly. If that's the case, I also have an idea. This part can also be modified. There's a special breathing technique in my school's Holy Fire technique. If we combine it with this technique, the effect will be even more outstanding. The 23rd generation Blood Mary couldn't sit still any longer. Zhang Tianyi and Bifla had both taken out their special arts. If she continued to keep it to herself, she would seem stingy. He might as well offer up the Scarlet Church's precious cultivation method for everyone's reference. Did you notice that the techniques we provided were meant for Shangqing realm cultivators to cultivate, but they weren't perfect? What Chen Zhao provided just so happened to make up for the flaws in our techniques. That's right. Everyone's heart skipped a beat. Although their ancestors might not be as strong as them, there was no lack of capable people among them. It's best if it's amazing and awesome. Zhang Ting and the employees discussed for a while and suggested a few names. Chen Zhao and the others weren't satisfied. The new employees were all confused. They didn't know Chen Zhao, the big boss. But all the old employees knew Chen Zhao. At the moment, they were all thinking seriously, even more so than when they were working. Boss, I think the final form of a domain should be a complete universe. Why don't we call it 9 changes of the firmament? It can be divided into 9 levels. The first level is to have a domain. The second level is to evolve into a small world. The third level is to evolve into a galaxy. The fourth level, Chen Zhao, Bifla, Zhang Tianyi, and the 23rd generation Blood Mary's expressions changed. In an instant, all 4 of them felt their thoughts become clear. Direction. Their direction was pointed out by an ordinary person. Evolving their domain into a universe was too far away for them, but the idea wasn't wrong. Chapter 2568. Okay, firmament transformation it is. Chen Zhao snapped his fingers and said, same rules. This is a good idea. The reward is $100,000. The new employees in the company were all dumbfounded. How could such nonsense get a reward of $100,000? Had the boss lost his mind? Also, why did the old employees look like it was only natural, right? They all looked constipated just now. Were they racking their brains? Did they know this would happen? Boss, it's firmament transformation, not firmament transformation. Okay, you did well. This meeting is over. Boss, I have an idea too. Boss, listen to me. Boss, give me a chance. Unfortunately, Chen Zhao had already hung up. Everyone looked at Chen Zhao, deep in thought. They'd all realized the importance of team. The team was made up of ordinary people. However, their minds were very active and different from ordinary people. Evolving a domain into a universe might be too unlikely. But what about a small world? The last piece of the puzzle they needed was finally complete. I'm going back, Zhang Tianyi said. He couldn't wait. When all his thoughts were clear, he'd regained his confidence. I'm going back too. So were Bifla and 23rd Blood Mary. They were still a distance away from cultivating this technique. However, they still hoped that they could start cultivating as soon as possible. After a short farewell, the four went their separate ways. Chen Zhao returned to the manor. His family was already asleep. He entered the river diagram and started cultivating firmament transformation. Chen Zhao spread out the nirvana flame and let it circulate in the heavenly pattern. Firmament transformation wasn't expanding the small world. It was changing the small world. The change was very subtle. Even if Chen Zhao circulated the technique for a full day, it wouldn't even grow by 1,000th. However, Chen Zhao could really feel that his domain was changing. Chen Zhao patiently circulated the firmament transformation over and over again. Under Chen Zhao's control, the heavenly pattern in the small world was like an old tree sprouting. It began to glow with life again. Unknowingly, it extended outwards. Chen Zhao's domain expanded a little. Moreover, the heavenly patterns in the small world seemed to be flourishing too. Chen Zhao thought of a question. Why hadn't the heavenly patterns changed in the past? According to his previous conjecture, Earth was the inner core of a supreme expert, and the heavenly patterns were the meridians. But now that the super powerhouse was dead, the heavenly pattern lost its vitality. No longer changed by the majority of the power. But now, with his own power, it was rejuvenated. Was it because of the nirvana flame? If the nirvana flame was the key, then old Zhang and the 23rd generation Blood Mary would have to ask him and Bifla for a cultivation technique. They would also need the Red Eagle's blood. At that time, he would be able to extort a huge sum of money from them. Chen Zhao gathered his thoughts and increased his speed. It took about 2 hours for each cycle to complete a full cycle. Furthermore, every complete revolution would cause the domain to change by 0.001%. However, the process of cultivation was very boring. But Chen Zhao didn't plan to stop halfway. Last time on Demon Island, he was plotted against by Leviathan Aberrantigimus and was almost sealed by him. This gave Chen Zhao a great sense of danger. This world was far more dangerous than he had imagined. Chen Zhao tirelessly cultivated the celestial transformation again and again. When Chen Zhao reached 200 cycles, the power of the small world had more than doubled. Moreover, the small world actually started producing vitality. Although the vitality produced by the small world was insignificant, Chen Zhao really felt that the small world was producing vitality. This vitality wasn't as much as the vitality that Chen Zhao lost under normal circumstances. The increase and decrease in vitality slowed down Chen Zhao's aging speed. Of course, this was also indirectly extending Chen Zhao's lifespan. According to this theory, the higher one's cultivation level was, the more life force the small world could produce. Would he really be able to achieve immortality one day? Chen Zhao suddenly had even more motivation. He started cultivating again. However, to Chen Zhao's disappointment, although the small world kept strengthening, it didn't produce more vitality like he had expected. Time flew in the river diagram. Chen Zhao's small world had strengthened several times. Although it had strengthened several times, there wasn't much change in its nature. Chen Zhao felt that vitality was more like the fruit that the small world had produced. If Chen Zhao didn't absorb it, the fruit would slowly grow. Moreover, the heavenly pattern that was close to Chen Zhao's body could be moved freely. Chen Zhao stayed here for almost 3 months. When he returned to reality, it had been less than 2 hours. Chen Zhao snuck back to his room and went to bed without a sound. Because of Chen Zhao's habit, he would go out in the middle of the night from time to time. He would sleep later than Fei Lai every time. So, Chen Zhao had long mastered the ability to sneak into bed without anyone noticing. He had a good sleep. Chen Zhao, who had just fallen asleep, suddenly opened his eyes. He wondered if he could inject vitality into Fei Lai's body through the small world. Chen Zhao put a hand on Fei Lai's waist. He controlled the heavenly pattern and connected it to Fei Lai's skin. Fei Lai moaned softly. She seemed to feel Chen Zhao's movements. Her eyes were still closed, but one of her legs was already on Chen Zhao's body. Chen Zhao didn't stop cultivating. His hands weren't idle either. "Darling, are you asleep?" Fine, Chen Zhao wouldn't be polite. An hour later, after being tormented by Chen Zhao for so long, Fei Lai didn't feel sleepy anymore. Do you want to sleep a bit more? No, I feel very energetic, Fei Lai said. Okay, I'll continue my experiment, Chen Zhao said. Experiment? What experiment? You're using me as a test subject? It's good for you. Chen Zhao reached out and grabbed Fei Lai. Don't move. I've read a Taoist book before. There's a technique called dual cultivation. Is that what you're using now? I don't know how. Chen Zhao rolled his eyes and continued to inject vitality into Fei Lai. I feel something seeping into my skin. Did you do it? Yes. Chen Zhao nodded. It seemed that the vitality condensed by his small world could indeed be given to Fei Lai. However, it wasn't a lot for Fei Lai. It seemed that he would have to wait until the small world produced enough vitality before giving it to Fei Lai. This bit of vitality was only enough for 1 or 2 days. Chapter 2569. With Chen Zhao's life force, Fei Lai seemed to be full of energy. They couldn't sleep, so the two started making babies again. Suddenly, Fei Lai felt Chen Zhao's movements pause. What's wrong? In the sea, Chen Zhao said. A servant I once enslaved has moved to the designated location. Nanchi Island, which Sardin was carrying, had already moved to Chen Zhao's private sea. 30 minutes later, Chen Zhao picked up the phone. Rasfa, time's up. What? Time? Chen, can't you see what time it is? Okay, sorry to bother you. Watch the news tomorrow. What are you talking about? Rasfa was still in a daze. His brain hadn't even recovered yet. Bye. Chen Zhao hung up and then called Risfar, Stephen, and Dell. The last one was Amira. Then, Amira called Chen Zhao back. Chen, are you talking about the investment project last time? What's the specific situation? You'll know soon. Chen Zhao didn't say it directly. Amira wanted to ask more, but Chen Zhao quickly hung up. Amira immediately changed. Last time, Chen Zhao had told her about the investment. He only told her to keep some cash on hand for investment, but he didn't say what the project was exactly. He only said that it was on the sea. But what kind of project could there be? Fish farming? Stop joking. They were all billion-dollar people. Unless the farming industry could make more than 50% profit, they wouldn't be interested. Moreover, farming had always been a business that relied on the weather. Now that the pollution was so serious, farming in the sea was even more unreliable. Sometimes, a large ship might accidentally drop something, and all the creatures in the sea would die. So, it definitely wouldn't be farming. Just then, Amelia felt a slight tremor beneath her feet. The furniture in the room was also making soft noises. Earthquake? Although Los Angeles was in an earthquake zone, most earthquakes were senseless or mild. Just then, the tremors grew stronger. Then, the earthquake alarm sounded in the city. Amira didn't panic. Instead, she quickly ran out of the room to the lawn outside. As the tremors grew stronger, Amira silently waited for the earthquake to end. The tremor reached its limit after half a minute, but it did not weaken. Instead, it lasted for several minutes. Generally speaking, earthquakes rarely lasted for such a long time. Although the earthquake just now was strong, it was not destructive. A thought flashed through Amira's mind without any reason. This earthquake was related to what Chen Zhao had said on the phone. The earthquake subsided, but not long after, the tsunami warning came again. As a coastal city, especially a coastal city located in an earthquake zone, it was a coastal city. As long as there was an earthquake, it would be accompanied by a tsunami. However, judging from the tremor just now, the tsunami wouldn't be very big. The next day, a piece of news spread throughout the world. At 4:25 a.m. last night, a small island appeared in the sea 900 kilometers southwest of Los Angeles. It was an island of about 20 square kilometers. According to the analysis of geologists, this island may have been pushed to the surface by the movement of the continental plate. At this moment, a research ship was approaching the island, rising from the bottom of the sea. Ka-Tuo Viller lifted his right leg. This is hell. We can't help it, Ka-Tuo's assistant said helplessly. The island rose from the sea less than 5 hours ago. There's mud under our feet. At the moment, there were still puddles on the island. Everywhere was covered in thick mud. There were even dead bodies of dehydrated sea creatures in some places. Logically speaking, the tremor last night shouldn't have been able to lift an island like this. This is too strange. Look at that mountain. It's at least 500 meters high. This means that the mountain has risen at least 500 meters from sea level. But for it to rise that much, it needs a stronger earthquake. However, at this moment, a helicopter suddenly appeared above their heads. Ka-Tuo-Viller and his team all raised their heads to look at the helicopter. Just then, the helicopter landed before them. A woman and two fully armed bodyguards alighted from the helicopter. Just like them, the woman was wearing boots, and it was very difficult for her to walk. Alex cursed Chun Zhao in her heart. However, she did not show it on her face. She approached Ka-Tuo-Viller. "Who are you?" Ka-Tuo-Viller looked at the woman before him in confusion. "I should be asking you that," Alex said. "You're on private land. I want you to leave immediately." "Private land? Are you kidding? This is American land. No, this sea area was bought by my boss half a year ago. So in principle, everything in this sea area belongs to my boss, including this island." "What? How is that possible? This is the open sea. Why did your boss buy it?" Ka-Tuo-Viller asked. In fact, she had asked Chun Zhao the same question half a year ago. But she finally had an answer. But even she could not be sure if this was part of Chun Zhao's plan. After all, it was unbelievable for an island to suddenly appear from the sea. Or did Chun Zhao have a super geological team that calculated this half a year ago? With Chun Zhao's wealth, this was really possible. "We're a research team," Tuo-Viller explained. "We're not a profit-making organization. We have no conflict with your boss." Private land was sacred and inviolable. This was the law. No reason could be used to violate this iron law. Even if they used the excuse that they were part of a scientific expedition team, it was still unacceptable. Without the permission of the owner, no one could enter casually. At this moment, someone suddenly exclaimed, "What's that? Look, what's that?" Beside a puddle in the distance, something was pushing up the mud on the ground. It was a huge lobster. At least, it looked like a lobster. It had a hard shell and huge pincers. When its body was pushed up, it seemed to be 2 meters tall. Everyone was stunned. What was that? Just then, the lobster started picking up the dead fish with its pincers and started eating. It did not seem to care about the people in the distance. Crack! The sound of the camera woke Alex up. "Everyone get out of here. Take the film from that guy's camera." Alex almost screamed as she gave the order. "No, it's my personal property. You can't do this. You bunch of bandits and bandits. 9 Heavens Divine King." Chapter 2570. At this moment, Alex finally understood the value of the island. This was a treasure trove, an unparalleled treasure, a completely new species. It wasn't one that ordinary people couldn't tell apart. It was a giant lobster, just like the legends. This kind of thing could bring a huge amount of wealth. Alex's eyes turned red. She'd asked Chun Zhao before if she could enter, but Chun Zhao's answer was that she didn't have enough money and couldn't enter. But it was different now. She had more than $300 million. She definitely had the right to enter. Alex took out her phone and dialed Chun Zhao's number. "Chun, I found something amazing on the island. No matter what you found, it's mine." "Boss, you know what's here? Do you really think I'd throw dollars into the water?" Alex took a deep breath. She was sure that Chun Zhao already knew what was here. Perhaps his team had discovered these creatures a long time ago and calculated that the island might float up. So, he'd spent $5 million to buy this area. She had to admit that if it were her, she'd do the same thing. "Oh, boss, when should we expose this? Isn't there a research ship?" "Let them do it," Chun Zhao said. "Got it." Alex nodded. Glancing at the camera that the security guard had snatched away, she said to the bodyguard, "Forget it. Give it back." The security guard glanced at the staff member he'd kicked. "You're lucky. Chase them out," Alex said. Alex said, "Send more people. Sink all the ships that approach this area without permission." "You can't do this. We have the right to stay here." The security guards didn't give him a chance. They kicked and shoved the team members away. That afternoon, the media all over the world reposted a piece of news. There was also a photo and a short video attached to the article. The photo was of a giant lobster. There was also a line of text. Then the world went crazy. Such a giant lobster. Was this not CGI? In addition, there was a video of a turtle that was more than 6 meters long, slowly crawling out of the sea. However, the video was too short. Meanwhile, Stephen, Rasfa, Risfar, Amira, Del, and Zola all called Chun Zhao like crazy. Stephen, I've already told everyone to come to my place for a meeting. Don't call again, or I'll block you. They'll be here soon. Not long after, all 6 of them finally arrived. Everyone couldn't wait to get first-hand information. Although the appearance of a new island was novel, similar things had happened in the past, and more than once, so its value was not high. However, in today's news that was spreading like wildfire all over the world, the things revealed by that photo and that video were too precious. All right, quiet down, Chun Zhao shouted. Are you guys going to let me talk? These people all seem to have fallen into money. They didn't give Chun Zhao a chance to speak at all. Here's most of the information on the island. Chun Zhao tossed the prepared documents before everyone. Everyone fought with each other, directly tearing apart the information. Chun Zhao crossed his legs and ignored them. In the end, Stephen was the first to get the torn information. Giant lobster, up to 3. 5 meters long, too. 8 meters tall when standing upright. 580 kilograms in weight. Scavengers, not aggressive towards living creatures. Giant turtle, up to 6. 5 meters long, 4. 8 meters wide, 2,800 kilograms in weight. Feeds on small and medium-sized fish. Not aggressive towards humans. Giant crab, up to 4 meters long, 660 kilograms in weight. Omnivorous, not aggressive towards humans. Giant eel, up to 18 meters long, 8 meters wide, 3,900 kilograms in weight. All living creatures are their targets. Extremely aggressive. Ichthyosaur, social amphibian, up to 30 centimeters long, 15 kilograms in weight. Vegetarian, knows how to use simple tools. Intelligence is close to that of primates. Everyone looked at the information on the information as if they were looking at a new world of novelty. There were 5 new species recorded on it, and each of them was very special. Just imagine, it was like the dinosaur island in the movie Jurassic World. Once a complete tourism industry was established, there would be an endless stream of tourists. This island was a treasure trove, a mountain of gold that hadn't been developed yet. Everyone present was a smart person, and they knew how valuable this island was. The island is too small, Risfar said. We need to fill the sea, but we can't destroy the island's ecology. Risfar was a businessman and had a clear mind. He knew that the island's greatest treasure was its unique ecology. However, the island was too small. It couldn't accommodate too many tourists. A high-quality tourist island not only had all kinds of facilities, but it also had to have a certain amount of space. If tourists came to the island and found it crowded, they would only lose interest. Okay, let's talk about the shared distribution, Chun Zhao said. I want 30% of the 200 million, and you guys can split the remaining 70%. Also, this is just for buying shares. You need money to build the island too. The money will be used to buy shares. Among them, Zola had the least assets. Even including her Baroness brand, she only had $2 billion in assets. She didn't even have $100 million in cash. However, the opportunity to make money was right in front of her. She didn't want to give it up. No, this wasn't a chance to make money. It was a chance to leave a legacy for 100 years. Zola, how much cash can you take out? Rasfa asked in a low voice. The father and daughter had different identities, but they were father and daughter after all. They had to make up for each other at critical times. 100 million, Zola said in a low voice. How come so little? Didn't Chun Zhao tell you about this before? He did, but I didn't think much about it. Rasfa was upset, but he didn't take it to heart. That wasn't the whole truth. He still kept an eye on Chun Zhao. He felt that Chun Zhao wouldn't lie to him, so he still kept 500 million. Therefore, he only had 500 million US dollars on hand. Amelia's wealth was probably the highest after Risfar's. However, a large portion of her money was used to pay for Chun Zhao's gold purchase. Therefore, She didn't have much cash to use. Of course, it wasn't that she couldn't afford it if she included her other businesses. However, the businesses that could be used to pay were all high-quality businesses that wouldn't be sold easily. Chun Zhao had told them so early because he wanted to give them enough time to prepare. He wanted them to have enough time to accumulate cash and liquidate some secondary and tertiary businesses. Chun Zhao wouldn't accept them if they used secondary and tertiary businesses as payment. Chapter 2571. Chun Zhao, I have some scattered shares, Risfar said. They're worth more than 500 million. Risfar, you don't have enough money? I think they don't have enough. If they don't want it, I can buy it for them. Rasfa wasn't familiar with Risfar. He'd only met him a few times through Chun Zhao. They didn't have any interactions in private, so at this moment, he didn't give them any face at all. I don't need your kindness. Which eye of yours thinks I don't have enough money? Chun, I need a few days, Rasfa said. How about I provide a plan? Chun Zhao asked. Tell me the price you want, and then get a loan from me. Tell me your price, and get a loan from me. The interest will be the bank's lowest interest rate. Of course, even if you're short on money, I won't force you. After all, we're still friends. If anyone can't get it, I can give you a year. If you still can't repay the loan after a year, then you can use your assets to pay me back. This is our agreement and my promise, Chun Zhao said. Chun, are you sure you want to lend us money? Rasfa asked, looking at Chun Zhao. Do you know how much I need? You just got a sum of money, Immerse said. $10 billion. Everyone gasped. Dell looked at Chun Zhao. Chun, what did you do this time? Did you sell the brewery? He sold 300 tons of gold to the bank. Everyone gasped again. 300 tons of gold. Yeah. You didn't find the treasure island, did you? I fished it out of the sea, Chun Zhao said, chuckling. He indeed had too much cash now. He wanted to sell it and collect some interest. Of course, the people before him were all his good friends. He couldn't give them high-interest loans, could he? So, he could only provide low-interest loans. Even so, Chun Zhao could only provide low-interest loans. In the end, the six of them bought 52% of the shares. They really couldn't buy more. For example, Zola bought 3% of the shares. She wouldn't be able to eat anymore. Chun Zhao had lent her $500 million for the 3% shares. Of course, she could borrow more money to buy more shares. But if that was the case, she wouldn't be able to hold on. After all, this money required interest. But before the completion of Nanshi Island's construction, it would not generate any profits. The basic construction of Nanshi Island would take at least a year. In other words, in a year's time, she would not be able to earn any profits. Furthermore, the investment in the infrastructure also depended on the proportion of their shares. The first budget for construction was $10 billion. If Zola bought 3% of the shares, she would have to invest $300 million. She still had to ask Chun Zhao for a loan. This meant that she had to pay back Chun Zhao's $800 million loan. Based on the bank's lowest interest rate, Zola would have to pay back a few $billion in total. Her Baroness's annual net profit was only a little more than $100 million. In the first 2 years, almost all of the Baroness's profits were used to pay off the money she owed Chun Zhao. Of course, as long as Nanshi Island started to make a profit, the pressure on her would also be greatly reduced. However, according to their plan, they still needed to invest more money in the infrastructure. As for the money he lent out, it was basically transferred from his left hand to his right hand. The one who bought the most was Risfar. He was the most well-prepared. He spent $3 billion for 15% of the shares. The second was actually Dell. To be honest, Dell was not very rich, but he actually bought 11% of the shares. Even Chun Zhao did not expect Dell to be able to take out $2 billion. Both Risfar and Risfar knew Chun Zhao's background, so they knew many secrets that no one else knew. In fact, only Rasfa and Zola did not know about Chun Zhao's supernatural powers. Amira and Stephen knew too. Amira bought 10% of the shares, while Rasfa bought 7%. Stephen bought 6%. Chun Zhao still had 48% of the shares. Chun, you still have 48% of the shares. Do you plan to keep them or sell them? There's a lot of profit involved, so it's best to get more people in, Chun Zhao said. But if outsiders want to buy, It won't be for 1% of the shares. It'll be 200 million. Chen Zhao had already decided. Apart from the 3% he would reserve for Alex, the others would have to look at their status first, followed by their wealth. Why would they join without status? Rich? There were too many rich people in the world. As a profitable project, any rich person would want to do it. Alex's phone had already been ringing off the hook today. They all wanted to talk to her boss. They weren't idiots. For example, there were not many islands in the world with better project resources. Hawaii's only advantage was its sunny beaches, spring all year round, and a few crater volcanoes. But Hawaii's GPD had reached $700 billion last year. Tourism accounted for 70% of the GPD. Nanke Island's project was much better than Hawaii's. As long as Nanke Island's GPD could reach 10% of Hawaii's, it would be a huge profit for the shareholders. Should we give the island a name? Chen Zhao asked. He didn't plan on using the name Nanke Island anymore. After all, the name was a sensitive one. As a pirate base, some people still knew about Nanke Island. To avoid unnecessary trouble, Chen Zhao felt that it was better to give a new name. The creatures on the island are all huge, Risfar said. Let's call it Titan Island. No, it's not special. The island's ecosystem is self-contained. How about calling it Creator Island? It sounds like some evil organization's experimental island. Are you sure tourists will come after hearing this name? Mystical Island, Stevens said calmly. Mystical Island? Isn't that too ordinary? Yeah, I think it's ordinary too. Everyone was questioning Stevens' naming standard. But Stevens said calmly, the more ordinary it is, the more effective it is. Mystical Island. This name can make people curious about the island. It doesn't need a fancy name. Everyone looked at each other. They seemed to be moved by Stevens' words. How about we hold the first shareholder meeting and vote to decide if we should give the island this name? Chen Zhao asked. Sure, let's vote. Chapter 2572. Mysterious Island. Those who agree, raise your hands. 5 yes and 2 no, Chen Zhao said. Then it'll be called Mysterious Island from now on. By the way, Chen, Stevens suddenly asked, the ingredients I took from you in the past aren't from Mysterious Island, right? What ingredients? Amira asked. Chen Zhao's face darkened. Great. Now he had another pair of hands. An hour later. Isn't this too good? Amira exclaimed. What ingredients are these? I've never had such good food before. Chen, can you supply them in bulk? Limited, Chen Zhao said. But he suddenly thought of Demon Island's otherworldly god. It tasted better. Compared to Chen Zhao's other ingredients, he could supply more of them. These top-level delicacies are definitely the best way to attract customers, Amira said. Chen Zhao thought about it. Every year, he would take 5 otherworldly gods from Demon Island. This wasn't enough. An adult otherworldly god would at most be 40 tons. 5 would be 200 tons. 200 tons wasn't enough for an island's tourists. I have another ingredient that's better, Chen Zhao said. But the supplier can only supply 100 tons a year. 100 tons isn't a lot, but it's not a lot either. Indeed, it's a bit awkward. Chen, then let's open a top-level restaurant on the island and invite Michelin Magazine to cover it a few times. Didn't you say that Michelin Magazine can't be bribed? Bullshit. Even a congressman can be bribed. Why do you think the editors of Michelin Magazine can't be bribed? Are they better? No problem opening a restaurant, but the ingredients need to be paid separately. Give us the ingredients first. We need to evaluate it ourselves. Stephen grinned. He'd gotten a lot of ingredients from Chen Zhao. He knew how good Chen Zhao's ingredients were. After eating Chen Zhao's ingredients, he even felt that the other top-level ingredients were trash. Having a strong appetite was a scary thing. It would make people lose their expectations for most delicacies. Everyone was also very interested in the top-level ingredients Chen Zhao mentioned. The ingredients Chen Zhao had taken out were already enough to fill their stomachs. But they weren't even the top-level ingredients Chen Zhao mentioned. How good would the top-grade ingredients be? Okay. Chen Zhao stood up and went into the kitchen. Soon, Chen Zhao came out with a large square piece of meat. Although this piece of meat had been frozen, it was placed in a low-temperature area, so the meat retained its original texture. It had to be said that the god of otherworldlings was a top-notch ingredient. It made sense that even the great Demon King couldn't resist its flesh. Let's not talk about its taste. Just the cut pattern alone was like an exquisite painting. After the spirit chi it carried fused with the meat itself, it emitted a faint fragrance. Even if it wasn't cooked yet, it was already enough to make people hungry. Rumble, Stephen gulped. Fuck, if you have such good ingredients, why haven't I seen you take them out? Stephen said, wiping his mouth. At this moment, Amira narrowed his eyes and said, I think 100 tons is too much. 100 kilograms a day should be enough. Everyone could not help but glance at Amelia before nodding thoughtfully. Indeed, no matter how good things were, if there were too many of them, others might not treasure them. The rarer something was, the greater its value. If you have extra, sell it to me. Amira suddenly laughed. In your dreams, Stephen snorted. He wouldn't give Amira any face. So what if Amira was richer than him? Regardless, the 6 of them still managed to extort a piece of meat from Chen Zhao. They'd already tasted it at Chen Zhao's house. Alex, how much do you plan on buying? Chen Zhao asked. Alex gulped down the water in her glass. She'd been really busy today because she was Chen Zhao's representative. So, she was also brought to the public. Everyone was asking about the cooperation. Even some top-tier crocodiles wanted to get a share. But hearing Chen Zhao's question, Alex felt even more pained. She'd thought that she was already very rich. Last time, she'd gotten $290 million from Chen Zhao's commission. Adding on her miscellaneous assets, her total was over $300 million. But Chen Zhao, that D** Ned bastard, asked for $200 million for each 1% of the shares. In other words, she couldn't even afford 2% with her current cash. Even if she used her assets as collateral, she could only get $20 to $30 million. How many more shares do you plan on selling? Alex asked. My friend already bought most of the shares, Chen Zhao said. I need to reserve 30% for myself, so there's 18% left. Alex really wanted to wave her hand generously and say, I'll take care of the rest. Unfortunately, she didn't have the courage. Even for her, 2% of the shares was too much. She couldn't eat it. Even though she knew that every bit of the shares was priceless, she couldn't help it. But she just couldn't eat it. How about this? Chen Zhao said. I'll lend you the money for 3% of the shares. No interest. Alex stared blankly for a moment, then silently nodded. Just then, Chen Zhao received a call from Denver. Denver, what's up? Mr. Chen, that island is yours, right? Chen Zhao was stunned. How did Denver know? How did you know? Ms. Alex is your personal lawyer. Fine. Mr. Chen, do you have any development plans for the island that has emerged from the sea? Yes, but it's a big project. Chen Zhao wanted Denver to back off. But Denver didn't back off. Instead, he said, Mr. Chen, no matter how big it is, I hope to get involved. Mr. Denver, do you know the conditions? I have $1 billion, Denver said. You're that rich? Mr. Chen, did you forget? I also have shares in Dashin Beer. But those shares can't be sold, Chen Zhao said. If you want to sell it, you can only sell it to me. This was the condition when Chen Zhao had given Denver the shares as a bonus. If Denver wanted to sell the shares, he could only sell them to Chen Zhao at 120% of the market price. I can mortgage it to the bank, so it's not impossible for me to take out $1 billion. Do you know how much someone offered me? I don't know, but I asked around and found out that someone offered Ms. Alex $55 billion for 3% of the shares. Chapter 2573. Money doesn't mean you can buy shares, Chen Zhao said calmly. At the end of the day, Denver was just working for him. So, Chen Zhao didn't have to give Denver face. Mr. Chen, I know a friend, a very rich friend. And? Chen Zhao asked, unconcerned. There were countless rich people in the world. That person also wants to buy shares. What does that have to do with you buying shares? I know where his bottom line is. Denver, make it clear. I don't like secretive conversations. I want to buy 2% of the shares for 1% and $500 million, Denver said. In exchange, I'll tell you what his bottom line is. Like I said, not everyone is qualified to buy it. There are many rich people contacting Alex, and I don't think your friend is the richest. It was time to split the cake. The people who could buy shares were either people close to Chen Zhao or people with power. For example, people who could cause trouble for the project. Amira was one of them. Chen Zhao had pulled her in from the start not only because they knew each other, but also because of her family's power. If there was any trouble in the future, Amira and her family would definitely intervene out of consideration for their own interests. Mr. Chun, maybe I don't have the right, but that person definitely does. Tell me who he is. Cruise King Jane Fankel. Chun Zhao was unfamiliar with the name, or rather, he had never heard of it before. However, Alex was right beside him. Covering the phone, Chun Zhao asked, "Do you know the Cruise King Jane Fankel?" "I know. The initiator of the biggest merger in the last century is Jane Fankel, who swallowed up the former cruise line giant. She is currently at the helm of the world's largest cruise line, Caribbean Empire Cruise Line. Caribbean Empire Cruise Line owns 28 top-class cruise ships, including 6 of the world's top 10 cruise ships. The deep blue of the ocean owned by the company is the largest and most luxurious cruise ship in the world. Mr. Chun, if I were you, I definitely wouldn't reject Jane Fankel's shares," Denver said. Denver said, "You should know how many excellent passengers each cruise ship can bring to you." Chen Zhao didn't deny it. In fact, he was already tempted. Jane Fankel had the right to buy shares. She's buying shares? Or the Caribbean Empire Cruise Line? It's an individual, but it will soon become the Caribbean Empire Cruise Line because this company will soon be delisted and become Jane Fankel's personal property. Then what's his bottom line? $2 billion, Denver said. Chen Zhao froze. Wasn't the price too high? How could Jane Fankel come up with so much money? Are you sure you didn't report it wrong? Even Chen Zhao himself didn't dare to value Mysterious Island, which still had nothing, at $200 billion. The other party actually dared to directly give $2 billion for 1% of the shares. It was like a sunrise industry, no matter how great the future was. No one dared to say how much this industry was worth before it generated any profits. "I'm sure I'm right," Denver said. "How many shares does Jane Fankel plan to buy?" Chen Zhao asked. 10%. "You mean he's going to spend $20 billion to buy 10% of the Mysterious Island's shares? Are you sure he can afford it?" "No. It's using the shares of the Caribbean Empire Cruise Company to exchange for shares of equal value." Chen Zhao raised an eyebrow. "Is the Caribbean Empire Cruise Line valued at $200 billion? "Yes," Denver answered. Denver replied, "Caribbean Empire Cruise Line's operation and profits in recent years have been very impressive. Last year's profit reached $8.9 billion. The average profit of each cruise reached $310 million. Caribbean Empire Cruise Line's routes cover all the deep-water ports in the world. At the same time, it also delivers hundreds of thousands of high-quality tourists to major ports." Chen Zhao raised an eyebrow. "I don't think it's a good idea to reveal his bottom line like this. Mr. Chun, do you think I'd say so much without his permission? Did this Jane Fankel send you to test me?" "Yes. Also, I need to correct your grammar. You should call her madam." Okay." Chen Zhao was a bit awkward. "How about you? How many shares do you plan to buy?" 2%, $1 billion, Denver said. This was also the maximum amount of shares he could buy. He obviously couldn't compare to Jane Fankel. "Sure, but I need to contact Jane Fankel first before I could trade with you." "Of course. You can set the time." After ending the call with Denver, Chen Zhao turned to Alex. "Your job's here." "Chun, I'm actually your lawyer, not a business consultant. I don't even want to charge you interest. Can't you do me a small favor?" "Fine. Tell me about the situation first." Chen Zhao told her what he'd heard from Denver. "You want to facilitate this share swap?" "Yes. In the short term, you'll benefit from this share swap, but in the long term, you won't. How many years will it take for Mysterious Island to be valued at $200 billion? Although the Caribbean Empire Cruise Line is very profitable, it has reached its limit. Moreover, the competition in the cruise industry is very fierce. If they can't find a new source of customers in a deep-water port, they will go downhill. What Jane Fankel is interested in is the new source of customers on the mystical island. Although her cruise line can bring a lot of tourists, she can also get more customers. Moreover, the mystical island doesn't lack the cooperation of cruise lines. Even without the Caribbean Empire Cruise Line, there will be other cruise lines trying to get in front of us. You don't have to worry about whether there will be a cruise line willing to dock. So, I'm losing money in this deal. There's no such thing as profit or loss in business. I'm just stating our current position. We don't need them, but they definitely can't do without us. They should be the ones who are anxious. You can ask for more. It looks like we have the upper hand, but with their current valuation, I don't think they'll be willing to pay more than a 1:1 ratio. I don't think we can increase the share swap ratio, but we can make them pay more. How much more do you think they'll pay? If it's a few hundred million, forget it. What if it's 5 billion? Are you sure you can do it? Chun Zhao couldn't believe it. He felt that Alex was asking for too much. In fact, Chun Zhao even felt that the prices he'd given his friends were like cabbages. Chapter 2574. The news outside was still everywhere. But Chun Zhao wasn't affected at all, as if it had nothing to do with him. This was the benefit of being a non-listed company. So what if someone found out his identity? He still had to follow the basic rules of the game. If someone purposely published all of his information in order to force Chun Zhao could have all the nude photos of his family appear in magazine. Therefore, when facing a super rich person, no one would easily cross the bottom line. Once the bottom line was crossed, it would become a game without a bottom line. It was like a nuclear weapon. When everyone could use it, no one dared to use it. Then Chun Zhao, Steven, Rasfa, Zola, Amira, Risfar, and Dell recommended representatives to form a team. Chun Zhao's representative was, of course, Alex. They all represented their own interests. At the same time, the team was in charge of planning the promotion and development of Mysterious Island. They were also in charge of contacting the outside world, such as service companies, hotels, shopping malls, luxury stores, supermarkets, and so on. Even the Disney Corporation tried to contact them. But for the amusement park project, everyone wanted to open it themselves. It would be completely different from other amusement parks. Chun Zhao didn't need to worry about these trivial matters. Most of the time, he only needed to sign. Fuck, all the police in New York are looking for us. Fidek is dead too, Rock is dead too, and Nanier is dead too. Her head was cut in half by a bullet. Only the three of us are left now. There were 4 people hiding in the small house in the woods. They had just robbed a bank and got $300,000, and they managed to get away. But the price was that 3 of their friends had died. And because in the course of a robbery, they shot 4 police officers. All the police in New York were looking for them like crazy. They couldn't move an inch now, even though they had $300,000. But they didn't even dare to go out of the woods. Knock, knock. Just then, slow footsteps came from outside. It was the sound of thick-soled shoes stepping on wooden boards. However, the footsteps sounded a little strange. The 4 people in the house immediately stood up and glanced at each other. They raised their weapons at the same time. Pavel, you're being followed? No. How could that be? Popper immediately shook his head. It definitely wasn't me. At this moment, Sedmer was behind the door with his shotgun. The other 3 also found cover. Some hid behind the fireplace, while others put down the table and hid behind it. Creak, the door of the wooden house was slowly pushed open. A familiar figure appeared in front of everyone. However, Sadmar, who was hiding behind the door, did not notice who it was. He smashed the back of the man's head with the butt of his gun. The man staggered a few steps, but did not fall to the ground. Don't move, Sidemar shouted. Stop, stop, stop. She's Nanier, Perwell shouted. At this moment, Sadmar also stopped and stared at the familiar figure in disbelief. Nanier stood there, her body dripping with blood, her hair disheveled. There was a very obvious gap in her head. However, from the gap in the skull, what he saw wasn't brain juice, but a piece of gray flesh. At first, they wanted to protect Nanier, but now they all backed away. A human brain was definitely not like that. Nanier twisted her neck. Her every movement gave everyone goosebumps, even if they were all extremely vicious and evil people. But when faced with Nanier's abnormal behavior, they all shuddered. "My friends, is this how you treat your friend, your boss?" Nanier said in a low voice. Even though it was just her voice, it was enough to make people shudder. You're not Nanier. Who are you? Or, what are you?" Popper asked in a low voice. The pistol in his hand was still raised. "I'm Nanier. Is there a problem with that?" "No, Nanier is a human. You're not, huh? I'm the one who gathered you and united you. As for the past Nanier, you don't need to know her. You don't need to know her." Nanier reached out and brushed her messy hair back. At the same time, she covered the hole in her skull. "I fought alone outside and killed all the policemen, but you left me behind. This makes me very angry." Only then did everyone notice that Nanier was covered in blood. There were at least 30 police officers and a dozen police cars chasing them. All by her. Just then, Nanier reached out and pulled out a bullet from the gun in her stomach. Then her arms, chest, thighs, and back. She pulled out bullets one by one. "Are you still going to point your guns at me?" Popper and the others exchanged glances and finally lowered their guns. "Nanier, boss, who exactly are you?" They could tell that bullets weren't much of a threat to Nanier. They definitely didn't have as much ammo as the 30 police officers. Since Nanier could kill 30 police officers, she could probably kill a few of them too. It would be very unwise to point their guns at him now. "Anyway, you my subordinates. As long as you don't betray me, I won't abandon you," Nanier said calmly. "Now, can someone give me some food? I need to replenish my energy. If you don't want me to eat you, you better go and prepare it now." "Okay, I'm kidding. I don't eat humans, at least not under normal circumstances. My digestive system is still a human's digestive system. I have an extreme rejection for flesh and blood of my own kind." Everyone shuddered at the sight of it. They hurriedly took out the food and watched as Nanier stuffed the food into her mouth with both hands. "Boss, what should we do next? The police outside are probably searching for us like crazy." "Leave, of course. I killed so many police officers. I'm sure the government will send the army to deal with us. I don't want to face a fully armed army. But how do we leave here?" Slap. Just then, Nanier threw down a few bloody human faces. Everyone shuddered and looked at Nanier in fear. They didn't understand Nanier's intentions. "Change your face, and they won't be able to find us." Chapter 2575. How do we use it? It's a little complicated, but believe me, you'll like the change. Everyone's expression was not good. After all, Nanier's eyes were very evil. I don't think we need this thing." Perwill's expression was a little fearful. He did not know what Nanier was going to do, but he instinctively felt that what Nanier was going to do was definitely not good. At this moment, the bloody human faces began to wriggle. If one looked closely, they would see many small wriggling tentacles at the edge of the human skin. The process is painful, but you'll also get a new identity. What if I don't want it? "Boss, will you kill me?" Everyone looked at Perwill, waiting for Nanier's answer. "No, but I won't save you either," Nanier said. At most, I'll just hide here. The police can't always put me on the wanted list." "The police will find this place soon," Nanier said calmly. Perwill's expression changed. Just then, Jeffries picked up a human skin. The human skin was still squirming in his hand. "How do I use this?" "Just put it on your face." After Jeffries put the human skin on his face, the tentacles easily pierced into his skin. "Oh!" Jeffries screamed. "Jeffries, what's wrong?" "No, I'm fine. I'm fine." Jeffries waved his hand. Everyone could see that the skin on that person's face was constantly straightening and smoothing out the originally unflattened skin. Soon, Jeffries became a different person. From his body shape to his appearance, even his hair color had changed. Jeffries was originally a short, brown-haired man, less than 1.7 meters tall, but now he looked at least 1.8 meters tall. His body was burly, and his hair had turned black and yellow. Jeffries? Everyone could not believe that the man in front of them was Jeffries. This was not just a change of face, it was a complete rebirth. Phew, this feels so good. I feel full of power. In the end, everyone chose the human skin. No one sensed anything strange. Now, No one knows our past identities, Nan Near said with satisfaction. Everyone looked at Nan and I, because she hadn't changed. But at that moment, Nan Near's face squirmed and quickly changed into another face. Where are we going now? Let's go to a place that we can enjoy. $300,000 is enough for us to enjoy unprecedented happiness, Nan Near said. However, Nan Near and her men soon found out. $300,000 was really not a lot, especially in a place like Los Angeles. $300,000 was only enough for them to spend 3 days in Los Angeles. 3 days later, they became paupers. Everyone looked at each other. Boss, how much money do we have? I don't have a penny left. My card has been maxed out. Nan Near was also confused. In her memory, $300,000 was a lot. It was a huge sum of money. But why? It seems that I can only go back to my old profession, Nan Near said calmly. If we're going to rob something this time, we'll rob a big bank. Just one robbery is enough for us to live comfortably for the rest of our lives, Popwell said. But we have no weapons. Last time they flew from New York to Los Angeles, they naturally lost all their weapons. Now, they didn't even have a single bullet. Let's rob a gun store first. It was easy for them to rob a gun store, especially at night, for a group of people who could rob a bank. The anti-theft measures of the gun store were really not enough. In fact, they just needed to cut off the power of the gun store. It was almost like a girl who had her legs ripped off. It was very easy for these vicious bandits to obtain a large amount of firearms, and many of them were fully automatic weapons. Popwell, have you found the target? Boss, there are too many banks in Los Angeles, and almost all of them are heavily guarded. It won't be easy to get them. Bullshit. Our firepower is so strong. I don't think any bank's defenses can stop our firepower, Nan Near said disdainfully. Everyone was speechless. Their firepower was indeed strong. But the key problem was that they couldn't really start a massacre. They were bank robbers, not rebels. Boss, don't worry. It's not like there aren't any. It's hard to find one in Los Angeles, but the ones slightly further away might not be as heavily guarded as the ones in the city. Popwell was very afraid. Their boss wasn't human. I don't want to wait too long. Not long, not long. At most 3 days. 3 days is too long. I don't want to pick up food from the trash. I want top-quality beef and exquisite pastries. Nan Near was very unhappy. Forget it. It's useless to count on you. Looks like I'll have to do it myself. Boss, what are you doing? Building an army, Nan Near said calmly. Building an army? Everyone was dumbfounded. How? Go to Africa and hire black people? No need for that, Nan Near said disapprovingly. Boss, what exactly do we do? It's simple, Nan Near said casually. You don't have to do anything. Nan Near tapped her temples with 2 fingers. An invisible and untouchable psychic energy spread out. Chen Zhao was taking a bath in the lake. Suddenly, he felt an unfamiliar spiritual power attack him. This mental power was unfamiliar, but Chen Zhao was very familiar with its methods. Wasn't this the unusual god's method? It had been used for hundreds of years. Didn't the unusual god have any other methods? For example, something more substantial. Mortal, submit to me. I will give you wealth, power, and eternal life. Chen Zhao suddenly opened his eyes. Go away. At the same time, Nan Near, who was in a corner of Los Angeles, suddenly opened her eyes. Nan Near suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. Boss, what's wrong? Damn it. There's a terrifying guy here. Nan Near remembered this aura. When she escaped from Demon Island, she remembered that the owner of this aura had torn her kind apart one by one. She had also escaped during the chaos. But Nan Near was very familiar with this aura. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.